So, shadow people, I swear they are the ones trying to destroy the show today.
Oh, it is what it is. They're little technology gremlins.
So, the show for today is the shadow people, or figures, or whatever you guys want to call it. Um, yes, or demons. So, we are going. I had experience, you had experience. We gonna what we researched, and we gonna see what other people talk about it. Okay, so I'll let you go for it first. Tell me your story with the shadow people. Yeah, we're live.
Problems and I wasn't sleeping well. I'd gone through all kinds of physical trauma, um, and it was not a good time in my life. And now, in the past, I had experienced these periods of, I guess the term lucid dreaming isn't really correct because that's where you can control yourself in the dream space. That wasn't really what it was. It was more like extremely vivid dreams where they felt real and I felt more alert than I was in other states of dreaming. And I felt like I couldn't move or get away. And so that, from what I understand, is best described as sleep paralysis. So I had experienced that before, and during those times, it was kind of once in a blue moon, but I would see really strange things while I was in that state. But then in college, I'm not normally a napper, but I think that I was so just physically and emotionally exhausted that I took a nap in the middle of the day. And at that point, I assume, in that particular state of dreaming, the sleep paralysis, where there is a chemical, as I recall, it's like a chemical that should normally prevent you from moving around during sleep, but then also and I'm looking up exactly which chemical it is, but it's where something goes awry in your brain, and that's when you can hear or see or hear things that aren't there. Um, yeah, it says it's a dysfunction in REM sleep, and it's something that trying to see. Yeah, it's a shorter REM sleep latencies, shortened NREM and REM sleep cycles, and at any rate, which I guess they still haven't studied it as much as they could, but yeah, people are in that state, and I was in that state, and during that time, that was when I saw at the doorway to my bedroom, I saw a shadow person standing there in the doorway, and it was I cannot remember if it had a hat on because that is a common depiction of a shadow person, one that has a hat on. Um, I think it didn't, but that part I can't really remember. But
And I'm sorry.
uh,
I'm sorry for stepping in. And it was because I had three of you talking in my ear. I had a horrible echo, and I just fixed it. Um,
oh,
but
sorry about that.
no, it wasn't your fault. It was my settings that were bad. How old were you when this happened?
So I would have been like maybe 20, 21, something like that at the time. Um, and yeah, it's apparently when normal sleep patterns are disrupted, and that the that's where your brain can hallucinate and you can see all kinds of strange things. And so when I was in that state, I saw this shadow person that um, it might have had a hat on, but I can't remember exactly. I want to say it didn't. I think it was just the outline of a person, and it was standing there in the doorway just looking at me, and it kind of turned its head, to look at me like inquisitively. And at that point, it went away as I woke up. It just kind of faded away from existence, and it was now keep in mind I'm very well versed in various supernatural phenomena, but I had actually never heard of shadow people before that, so it wasn't like it was, you know, it wasn't like I'd been reading about them the previous night, and so because you know how that is, you research something and it's kind of in your subconscious, your immediate subconscious still, and so your brain can kind of have that rattling around. It wasn't like that. I'd never actually heard of shadow people before I saw one, and I had never experienced anything like that before in my life, and I'd never experienced anything since then. And so then, yeah, it looked at me, and it was in that particular state I remembered. So you remember in Lord of the Rings when Frodo or anybody else puts on the ring, and
I
it's
don't like
that.
Lord of the Rings. I have not watched it.
Okay, well, most people out there will know what I mean, where like there's that particular kind of swirling black and white kind of effect.
Uh-huh.
I remembered when I saw it, it kind of looked a little bit like that, and there was a similar kind of noise there, and then it went away as I started to wake up, but it definitely felt real, and it felt like I was awake when I saw it, even though I was in that weird in between state. And all the strangest stuff that I've seen when I've been in that state have they have felt extremely real and been really vivid. Like I can hear it and see it abundantly clearly, and then I wake up, and so yeah, that was my experience with it. And I woke up, and I, instead of being scared, I was kind of thrilled because I was like, oh, that was cool. It was it was something that I'd never experienced before, and so then I immediately looked it up, and that's where I came across shadow people and sleep paralysis and everything, and then that kind of explained um, what I had seen, except that there are also a lot of people that believe that shadow people are supernatural in nature, and it's more bizarre in the sense that when people are in that state, then that's what they see. Like people have commonly reported shadow people as the thing that they see, or a similar phenomena called old hag syndrome, which is where It's like this horrific, like witchy looking old woman that sits on your chest to make it hard to breathe. And that is another common vision during that state. And I have not seen that, but I did see the shadow person the one time, and it was pretty wild. And don't think I've ever been in that particular sleep state again because um, at that time, like that was kind of when I was on the tail end of my really bad health problems, and then luckily things have stabilized since then to where I don't think I have quite so much internal turmoil, such that I would really have uh, the conditions that would be right for achieving those kinds of visions again. And I mean, I get in modes where I don't go to sleep as readily, but I tend not to. The frequency with which I dream at all is rather limited these days. But yeah, that was when I saw one. But and I understand you saw one a few. What was it? A few weeks ago? A few
months
months
ago.
ago?
Well, um, so I'll tell you my story, and then I'll go tell you to the my mom had some experience with shadow people to a shadow per guy, if you can think about it.
Yeah.
So, about 3 or 4 months ago, I was asleep, and when I'm really tired, I'm really hard to wake up. It is what it is. I'm just a hard person to wake up. And I was facing my wife, and I was kind of hugging her, and somebody was like pushing my shoulder to turn me the other way, like waking me up to the point that they woke me up, and I turn around, like like what? And in my house, it's just my wife and I, our two dogs, our two cats, and the fish. So there's no human that can touch my shoulder and make me turn around. So I turned around, and there was this shadow person. I felt like it was a guy, a shadow guy, next to my bed. And I was trying to focus and see what it was or how tall it was. I do use glasses, so I just couldn't. I know it was darker than dark because my bedroom was dark and I could see the whole outline of a person. But by the
Mm-hmm.
time I was actually able to be fully awake to the point of focusing to see what it was, or even thinking of getting my glasses, it was gone. I was mad because I was like, okay, now I'm awake, and you took so long to actually wake me up, of touching my shoulder to wake me up. Then, I just went back to bed because it doesn't really bother me. That stuff don't bother me. But
Mm-hmm.
that was the closest that I've been to a shadow person, like next to me, like that. That's like next to my bed. Um, that
Well,
and
that was closer than mine because mine didn't get any further than the entryway to the bedroom.
I think for me, I think it was my dad because he's been around my house a lot, or around me a lot, and it was trying to get my attention, because it was things going on at the same time every night. And I have a good friend of mine, a couple of good friends of mine. They're mediums, and they kind of helped me figure out that my dad was around. But
Your dearly departed dad.
yeah, my dear departed dad.
Yeah, he wasn't just physically standing
No,
there,
no,
you
but
know,
but
dressed up all head to toe in black, just trying to freak you out.
right, no, both of my parents are dead. They've been dead for years. But
Yeah,
yeah,
just want to make that clear to
right.
people.
But this one was like literally a touch, and then the figure was there. I've been in a lot of ghost hunting situations, and I've been part of different groups, and I am part of a group right now. And then I've been in episodes of different shows, of a show, and I have seen shadow people like that. And my mom, during her years, there was one shadow person that followed her all through, from the moment that she was a kid to an adult. They used to stand on the bed, at the foot of her bed, And this one, she used to tell me it had a hat. She could see the outline of the hat, and it was tall, and it was a man. For the way they was standing, she could see it was a man, and it followed
Mm-hmm.
her all through her years. So
Saw his dingly dangly.
I don't know about that, but it's kind of
Well,
it's
well, I was that happened for me too. The one that I saw was pretty. Well, it was pretty. It was about as tall as the doorway itself. And it was definitely a male in terms of its body shape, and it was such that it was, well, to me it looked kind of imposing, but it was such that it would have, if it had lingered, it would have definitely been a force to be reckoned with.
right.
And but again, that was when I was in that particular state of sleep. Now you bring up a very important distinction, which is that the ones that we experienced, those were, scientifically speaking, those have been explained as one of the possible things that one can see when they are in that sleep paralysis state, or, especially when normal sleep patterns have been disrupted. But there's another component to shadow people, which is that they also can be seen when a person is awake, and that apparent. So this goes back to a show called Coast to Coast AM, which is in 2001. It was
Yeah.
when the concept of shadow people was first really brought up in the popular consciousness, despite the fact that shadowy beings have been in various religions and legends and folklore and things. But in on that show, there was someone named Heidi Hollis who published her first book about shadow people, and she said that that those shadow people can flicker in and out of people's peripheral vision, and so that's another subset of shadow people that, besides being in that sleep state, being able to see them there. Apparently, there are other kinds where people, when they're awake, they can see them just out of the corner of their eye or around a corner or something, and
Which
that's a whole other subgenre of YouTube videos as well, because you see videos where people claim to have gotten recordings of shadow
people,
people,
right?
and
But then
if you look,
again, before my thoughts leave me, but
yeah,
and two, that's when in the medical side they think that some of those problems when people see shadow people, they see shadow things in the corner of the eye, is a problem with the retina of the eye, that they see some shadows. So, and that's why it's so hard to see shadow people, or to prove of shadow people, if you don't have the proof right there and then. um which for
well,
me, I don't think is the eye problem. For me is, I do believe in shadow people, and I don't, there's a lot of people that think that shadow person or a shadow thing is a demon. I don't believe in that, and I'm one person that I can tell you that I don't think demons are out there to get you all the time. Demons have better things to do than being in a corner waiting for you to get you.
yeah, that's like that's
Right.
kid stuff
I'm
basically,
not
but
saying they don't exist. They do exist. They're out there. They will possess people, but they're not in every corner to get you. For me,
they're not gonna jump out and go boo,
right.
because
For
yeah,
me,
that's what I mean.
shadow entity is the lower way for an entity to manifest itself, because it doesn't need that much energy to manifest, just a shadow.
Hmm.
So that's
Well,
why.
and it's worth saying that, because like when you've done your thing on the ghost finders, that you've measured the I saw that footage that you did where it was that special camera where you had the dots that were able to show kind of the points of light that were being bent in a certain way to try
I
and
wasn't
give a
with the
shape.
ghost finders because with the ghost finders are only the audio and some cameras for them. I was the one that you saw. It was with the team that I'm with right now. That actually have the camera. That was the evidence that we got in a cabin where my teammate and our team lead was talking to a spirit, and the spirit literally was trying to kick her. That's what you're talking about.
Yes, and that's, well, the kind of camera you used, it basically was able to detect very subtle variations in, correct me if I'm wrong, very subtle variations in the way that the light was being like bent around what was supposedly empty space. And in this particular case, like from what I understand with parapsychological theory, that with entities that try to manifest, that there is somewhat of a energy usage in order for them to manifest. So whether it's a difference in light or heat. I mean, like in The Sixth Sense, for example, like the temperature of the room goes down when a entity is there to manifest, because that's the energy usage to make them visible. But then also in this case, you have these shadow people that kind of like a black hole, how with a black hole light can't escape it, but also because of that they don't reflect any light or anything, and because they're so massively dense that if you were to see one, which if you were to see one, then it would look darker than anything else you've ever seen in your life, because it's the pure absence of light. And so in this case, you have these things that when we say darker than dark, it's because they don't reflect any light whatsoever, and that would give them their silhouette kind of look. Because even with even with a traditional shadow, there's obviously a noticeable difference between the light hitting the wall, um, and then the light that's around it, around the shadow. But even then, there is still a little bit of light that is behind, that is within the shadow. So that's a key point of difference there. But that does seem to go into the larger parapsychological thought of entities having to use up some kind of energy in order to manifest in some way. Um, and then within the kind of subgenre videos that I've seen with shadow people that have been recorded, which they could very well be faked, they could be real. I don't know. I can't verify it or disprove it or anything, but in the videos I've seen, they do have that same effect of being darker than dark and standing out, even as they are looking around different dark corners and things. So, um, which is kind of an eerie thought, because in our normal lives we don't really have a concept for that, because everything that we see has to reflect light back at us in some way, so that way we can see it. Because otherwise, if it didn't reflect any light, then our eyes wouldn't be able to pick it up. And that's why, if you've ever been in a cave, because like I've done cave tours, and they'll do this thing where they take you to the middle of the cave, and then just for like a few seconds, they'll turn off all the lights, and it's, talk about darker than dark. Like, you cannot see a thing, and it's pretty terrifying. So that's like the closest that we have to just the complete absence of light. And you actually can't be in that state for too long, because if you were to be in, like, say, a dark cave for too long, then your eyes would, you'd go blind, because your eyes wouldn't be
Right.
receiving the necessary light stimulus. So it's very important. But yeah, that's something important difference. But as far as the look of shadow people, you mentioned a hat, because that is something that is a common descriptor. You have either just the silhouette outline of a person, which is a very common thing. But then you also have these looks for these beings where they look like they're wearing these kind of like fedora type hats.
Right.
Um, like someone that you might have seen. They look a little bit like in some either illustrations or artist renderings that I've seen, they look a little bit like if you were to plop somebody from like a film noir from the 40s and put them in there and then just get rid of all the light surrounding them. That's kind of what they look like, but they don't have to look like that. Like I think the one that I saw, I don't recall it having a hat on, but it was definitely a male figure, and I don't know uh, if they have a gender or anything. They may not. I don't know.
Well, normally when somebody like when with my mom when she used to say I know it was a male is because she felt like it's a male because like with spirits you had that feeling
So that's
like
another.
when you're around a spirit you feel their essence as a male or a female. Like when I was here and I was awakened by this shadow person, I didn't feel there was a female. It didn't feel like it was like a woman trying to wake me up. No, that was a male trying to wake me up and say, "Hey, get up."
Well, she probably would have brought you breakfast in bed if it was a female,
No,
but
probably if I would have been a female, would have been my mother, and she would have just smacked me in top of the and back of my head. That would have been completely different.
oh
But
yeah.
but the it's just and normally I always hear for shadow people, and I might be wrong, but all the stories that always has been told to me is the shadow person that people see is a male for some reason, and that's why they always think it's a demon because for some reason they always think the demons are always males, which that's very
Well,
hypocritical.
you know, we men we can do some pretty demonic things, but yeah, it's but then that doesn't take into account succubi and things like that.
Right.
But
But if there's females angels, there should be females
female
demons.
demons and vice versa. I mean, and that's so with what these things actually are, if we are to take them outside of these are just things that we see when we're in that sleep state, which could very well be the case, or if we're in that sleep state, then perhaps we're more attuned to be able to see them. Who knows? But some of the explanations as to what they might be could be demons, could be some people have said that they are kind of interdimensional travelers, like people that are within that they're kind of carryovers from other dimensions, which I think that'd be kind of interesting if like different dimensional planes were sort of overlapping and that was like the remnants of what was there. But it just really depends on if you think that they are, um, yeah, if they're malevolent or not, because people don't really have a consensus on that. The person I mentioned before, Heidi Holland, she says that people have reported the figures attempting to jump on their chest and choke them, which, if you talk about sleep paralysis, that's a common symptom of like feeling like something's pressing down on your chest and like you can't move. And then she said she believes the figures to be negative alien beings that can be repelled by various means, including invoking the name of Jesus, which that would lend some credence to the demonic argument, but there is no consensus on it because, well, the topic of sleep paralysis itself is not as well studied as it should be, let alone these particular phenomena. And but yeah, they could very well be inhabitants of another universe that they're little echoes into our reality. It's just there's too many unknowns to really be certain. I don't really think you could say like traditional extraterrestrials or anything because
No.
I mean it's kind of in the name extraterrestrial and terrestrial is Earth, so that's physical. To me, this would have to be something non-physical or like in the case of something interdimensional, it would have to be like like if you were to have two universes or two dimensions sort of crossing over each other, almost like cloud masses that pass each other or
Right.
cross each other. And there are different theories about that, and there are different scientists that I've read about. They've had different theories about ways in which we might be able to measure. Um, what was it? Was it? Think it was like either quarks or neutrinos, something like that. That could be wrong, but it was some particles like that that some scientists are theorizing might be evidence of alternate dimensions, like their presence
Right.
might it might indicate that alternate dimensions are kind of crossing over into ours and ours into theirs and in that respect, then it would be not too hard to believe that perhaps that it's a little bit like two trains that pass each other on different but parallel railroads. It's like, well, you can see people vague ideas of what they look like in the other on the other train, but you don't see them all that great. So for all we know, it could very well be that same thing. And neither malevolent nor benevolent. It could just be neutral. But yeah, if we were to go to like a potentially demonic, explanation, then that would be its own thing.
And for me, and I stay with what I believe there could be spirits or lower, if there are demons, there could be lower demons that is the only way that they can manifest themselves is through a shadow, because they don't need that much energy to manifest themselves, because it's not something that you see, that really weird when you see cases where a shadow person or a shadow thing, you know, threw something or move something. It takes a lot of energy for a spirit or entity to move a an item from one place to another place. And normally a human entity is not going to have the enough it's not going to have the power to move something from one place to another one. Normally that type of powers are left for other type of entities. They're not humans.
Yeah.
But I don't know. For me,
Well,
shadow people or shadow things are that shadows. They're out there. I seen one. I was touched by one. I think it was my dad, and that was the only energy that he could manifest in that moment. I was kind of mad that he woke me up because I was sleeping, and it was a good dream. I had seen him in investigations, and you know, I don't get scared. I don't know. It's just for me, a shadow thing, and that's something that I'm gonna get scared of.
yeah. Well, there's too many unknowns to really be able to tell if it's a malevolent or not. I mean, it's certainly out of the ordinary, and I mean that alone would be enough to unsettle a person, but it's just there's two. I mean, now to be fair, so ghosts and the non-physical, the metaphysical, has been an element of I think every culture in history, and it's been something that's been talked about ever since recorded history, um, and so I would be one to say that it would be pretty blasé of us to just dismiss all of that as hysteria or whatever, as a lot of people do. But at the same time, it's because it's an area of consciousness or reality that we haven't been able to measure yet. That's why it has to be in the realm of the meta physical because it's outside the realm of the physical. But yeah, it's just I'm my big hope with all this stuff is that our techniques for being able to measure and experience these things will only continue to improve. So that way we can hopefully get some answers on these things, because the people encountering these things, that's been going on for so long that I think, again, it would be pretty blasé to dismiss it outright. Um, but I think from what I understand, like I said, with the basic parapsychological thought that manifesting in any way, like visually or physically, that does require some kind of energy, um, the expenditure, whether it's to be seen physically or to move something. And then if you're familiar with some of those conspiracy theories surrounding CERN, where supposedly, oh, they're trying to open a gateway to hell and all that stuff, which isn't true. But what is true is that that's the location of the most powerful particle accelerator on Earth, if I recall. And so, if one were to try to open, another, like a dimensional rift or something, that would require, I think, even more energy than even the world's most powerful particle accelerator could achieve. And so that's why, I think part of why, if you were to subscribe to the parapsychological idea that, okay, ghosts have to expend some kind of energy to manifest, and so if you were to actually get like a full-blown rip in space-time, it would require, almost an unfathomable amount of energy. And so that's why you don't see a lot of those eventualities of, like, a big rip to where, dead people come back, or, any number of things like that. But you also get that theory of black holes being possible, windows to other dimensions or wormholes or things like that. And part of that's because, well, we've never been able to, like, get a probe inside of one and have it, well, because they're so far away, but also if we were to, it wouldn't really be able to live to tell the tale because of how dense, like immeasurably dense they are. So, point being that undoubtedly, if we were to try to get to wherever these things are coming from, it would require an unfathomable amount of energy to where we probably couldn't do it. And so, perhaps that's why, like with a sleep state, that that is some kind of really poor obfuscated window into that world, or something like that. I mean, there's so many unknowns at this point, but I do think that if we were to be able to penetrate that area of science, it would have to come through uh, some kind of discovery with whether or not neutrinos or whatever, if those are evidences of another dimension, or some way to harness these things. And I imagine if you were to get just that little key into that area of metaphysics, then the rest of this stuff would follow suit.
Right. And a lot of people, what I like is when people, try to say, should the ghosts or spirits or shadow people or demons or angel or God or demon or devil doesn't exist because there's no proof. And what I say, give me the proof that doesn't exist. If you can show me that doesn't exist, then we're good. I'm like, why are you trying for me to prove to you they exist when you can't prove to me they doesn't exist?
Well, I mean, I get why people say that, because it's well, there's the saying, the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence, which, scientifically speaking, you can't really go by that as a rationale, because if you do, then that opens up the floodgates to anything potentially. And so you have to go by that which you can prove as far as something to guide you. But that being said, I do think that we've had enough, like centuries and millennia old descriptions of the same basic kinds of things, to where I think that does lend some kind of credence to there being something there that we're not seeing yet, plus some of these other disparate pieces of information that we're accumulating from other sources, like learning more about neutrinos and things like that, to where the more of these different disparate pieces of information can be acquired and then hopefully kind of culminated together, then that can provide a clearer picture. So I get that reasoning, because if you open the floodgates to anything and everything, then you don't have a solid foundation of proof on which to proceed. But, there is also a reason why these things have to be labeled under the label of metaphysical, because it's outside the realm of the physical, and science can only really deal with the realm of the physical by its very
But
nature.
even when you do have proof and you do show some proof that there's something out there, and you have some type of solid proof, then people always go with that, oh, that's fake. It's,
Yeah.
but
Or, and healthy skepticism does have to be employed,
of course,
whether you're dealing with the metaphysical or not. Skepticism of any claim of anything that anybody can make, you have to approach it skeptically. But the there are people who are just so willing to put anything that is off center of that which can exist in the realm of the physical. They're very willing to just dismiss it outright, rather than to say, well, maybe, and you don't like stake your life on this, but at the same time, it's like, well, maybe there is something that is outside the realm of what we can measure right now that maybe we will be able to at some point. And I think there's nothing wrong with saying that, because that's a pretty humble, position. You don't ever want to for certain say that that can never exist, or this absolutely exists, even if the proof of it can be shaky. And as science goes along, we have uncovered things that were only myth, yesterday. Like, for example, I want to say it was around the year 2000. It says something like that. It might have, a little more, a little less, when they discovered a real giant squid, because that was a folkloric creature for
right,
centuries. But there they found one. And part of it is because, well, the ocean is
right.
unbelievably deep and vast, and any thing like that can hide anywhere, pretty much, because we know more about outer space than we do about our own oceans, in terms of the depths and the various crevices that these things can come from. So, and they found one, let alone like a platypus, which, when they found the pelt of one of those, they thought it was a fake. They thought that someone sewed a duckbill
Right.
onto like onto a beaver or something. And it, by all accounts, if you never saw one moving around, then it's like, well, yeah, you would have sworn it was a fake, because it's like, how could such a bizarre looking mammal that somehow lays eggs, how could that exist? And but lo and behold, there it is. So, you know,
And it's always, I always said, there is, for myth to happen, there's gotta be something. There's gotta be, like the shadow people. It took into 2001 for actually to be spoken like in deep conversation in the show, when these things have been around for like ever. So
hmm
is there's always, if there's a rumor, there's gotta be a reason why it's a rumor. You
yeah,
know.
behind every legend, every rumor, every piece of folklore, even literature, anything like that, a stereotype, but behind all of that stuff, there's usually some teeny little nugget of truth. And it's just a matter of, well, how far away from that nugget of truth did the rumor or the whatever get. But there usually is a reason for it to have popped up in the first place.
Yeah.
and that tends to be because somebody saw something or experienced something that they couldn't explain, and so therefore
Right.
they did the best they could, and it just kind of got legs of its own. But that's pretty and you can usually, I mean, that's like what etymologists, not entomologists, etymologists, that study words and their origins, like that's what they have to do. They have to trace that stuff. And I mean, the evolution of culture and language and rumors and things, that is kind of harder to trace because you have to study the flow of ideas, and that is kind of the non-physical flow of something that becomes real. And that's something that Alan Moore, the great comic writer, that he talked about was because he's a ceremonial magician, and he comes at the idea being that magic has a lot to do with writing, um, and specifically talks about how there is, like, say, a three-dimensional physical chair in real material space, and then there's the idea of a chair, and the idea of a chair is more important than any one single physical chair, and yet the idea of a chair exists nowhere in physical
Right.
reality. And so when you think of it that way, then that which is non-physical, such as a concept like Marxism or capitalism or democracy itself, like you can't find that in nature necessarily. I mean, you find groupings of animals and things, and they organize themselves around hierarchies and things like that. But the concept of these things, like you cannot find those in nature. You can't measure them in a lab in and of themselves, but you can measure their effects very readily. Same with gravity. Like gravity, we can measure the effects of gravity very, very precisely, but gravity in and of itself is still kind of a mystery to us, and we're making some discoveries on it. Apparently, gravity, they're thinking that it comes in waves, but yeah, gravity in and of itself is still very much a mystery, and so and nobody doubts the existence of gravity unless they're flat earthers or something, but or of that same ilk. But we all feel the effects of gravity every minute of every day. It's what keeps us physically in a stationary position instead of just floating around. So we don't doubt the effects of it, but yeah, we still to this day don't really know
You said that,
what gravity
and
is.
I just thought something about so when you saw your shadow person, was that shadow person standing or floating?
It was standing. It was definitely standing, and it's
Mine, I didn't see the legs because I was in bed. So all I did was turn around and it was there. So
yeah.
I didn't look I didn't look down to see the legs. So
Well,
um,
I didn't see like the feet actually touching the ground, but just the way that it was standing, the like it stands the way that the weight of the body kind of fell vertically down, like it was pretty clearly a
so that would
stance.
be a good question to leave out there because we're coming close to the end of the show. Is if people out there has seen shadow people, if they have seen them floating or if they see him standing or walking. Um, I have only seen them standing. Um, I have not seen walking or floating.
Yeah,
So
I haven't either. And I mean that's an interesting thing also when you talk about because the standard depictions of ghosts in culture are that they can float and fly around and all that.
yeah, with the
And
white sheet. And
Well, the white sheet are like I wasn't really a huge fan of the Patrick Swayze film Ghost because I felt like the dialogue was really cheesy and kind of melodramatic, but I did like the way that they attempted to kind of give almost like a how-to guide as far as, well, you're a ghost and this is what you got to do to get around. And so, like, in his case, like, he had to really concentrate to get, because every time he tried to touch
Right.
anything, it would always go through everything. So he had to really concentrate to get his physical, to try and physically grab something or something like that. But, like, so in rather than really floating, he was more able to walk around. And I think that was more so because, well, you know, budget wise, they wanted to do that, but also,
Well, look at the
I,
Sixth Sense, the movie Sixth
mhm.
Sense. They were all walking, and even what's his name? Oh my God,
Bruce Willis.
thank you. It just passed my mind. He didn't even know he was dead. Everything he did, he thought he was doing it himself. When the little boy was the one opening the doors or
Uh huh.
moving things, but
Which that was one of the most intelligent parts of that movie. Well, one of the many, but that in particular, it was the fact that so the way that they explain it in there is that the ghosts are walking around like regular people, and they don't know they're dead, and they only see what they want to see.
right.
And so that's well, that's why, like with Bruce Willis, that's why we only really see what he sees. And part of it is because it's through that filtered lens. And also, I imagine for him, in a weird way, it must be kind of like a dream state of being, because we only ever see him, well, encountering Cole Sear because he can see the ghost, but also when he tries to interact with his wife or whatever, he's not able to, and we never see him like sleeping. We never see him get into that basement because, as we later find out, something is physically blocking the way, even though he can't see it. So if such a thing were to, if we indulge that notion that yes, ghosts exist, then I imagine that it probably would be, to a certain extent, it probably would be them not necessarily knowing that they were in that state and just kind of stumbling around blindly. But then I'm sure that there are others that probably do know
Like
that they are.
the movie The Others. Half of the cast
Yeah,
knew they were ghosts, and the other half didn't have no idea they were
yeah.
ghosts.
Well, and the best summary of the whole thing, I think, is in the original Poltergeist, where the parapsychologist, played by the amazing, cannot remember her name off the top of my head, and I hate that I can never remember it, because she won Best Supporting Actress in Network, and she's so good. Beatrice Straight, yeah, that's her name. So when she explains it to the little boy, basically that people, when they're in that in between state between the next life and their physical life, that some of them don't know that they're there. Some of them, are nice to you. Some are mean. Some are, they get angry and throw things around like a poltergeist. And so I imagine that, yeah, there's probably all manner of people that in that kind of in between state that are in various degrees of awareness of their existence and different degrees of, like, trying to figure out why they're there and what they need to do to pass on. And of course, typically that's where you get the idea of unfinished business and things like that, whatever it is that's holding them to our plane of reality.
Right. But at the end, so shadow people. What do you
Yes.
think?
I think, well, at the very least, because see, I'm very interested in this stuff. I do always try, nonetheless, I do always try to approach it through a skeptical lens, because you have to, in order to not let your sense of certainty run away with you, because then you start, as soon as you open those floodgates, then you start believing in all kinds of crazy things that have no evidence. But I think at the very least, then it's probably one of the many things that one can see in a state of sleep paralysis. And I can speak to that much, at least, because I know that I saw all kinds of strange things prior to seeing the shadow person. And they were definitely more like obviously dream things. that you could easily explain away as a just particularly vivid dream. But again, the shadow person, that just, it was a different kind of thing. It felt different. And I had never encountered one before or since. So that's why I single that out. And that's what makes me like, well, this feels like something else, and it because of all the commonalities with people seeing the same thing, it does lead me to believe that there is something more to it. Either it's a really, really common symptom of sleep paralysis, or it's something that people can experience really vividly while they're in that state. But at the very least, I think the connection to sleep paralysis definitely is there.
Okay. For me, like I said, shadow people or shadow entities, for me, are shadow entities, not people, are just the lower form of a entity that can manipulate the energy to present themselves to a human. And I think that's, for me, it is that. I don't think it's a person, always a person. It could be whatever entity can manipulate the energy to show themselves to the person. It could be while sleeping, or it could be, you know, any time. Now, I am interested to see if anybody has seen a shadow person with different color eyes. There are rumors there that they've seen their shadow people with like red eyes or yellow eyes. Have never seen them, but there are rumors out there. That would be interesting to hear about. Just, you guys can, if you are in YouTube when you see this, just comment it on the YouTube comments. If you're in Facebook, just comment on Facebook. We will have the conversation on the comments. Do you have any final words, sir, before I disconnect you?
I think the other one to throw out there is the possible interdimensional or dimensional crossover explanation, which the problem is I think there's just too little that's known about, well, any of these explanations, but that one in particular. There's too little evidence to really say definitively, but I think that we're seeing other little nuggets of possible evidence of alternate universes crossing over with ours that I think that would certainly, if not shadow people specifically, then something else like that. I think that could be something else that may prove to have factored into it. But again, we just don't know enough yet to really say for sure. But yeah.
Okay, so the show today was shadow people. We did talked about other things a little bit, like always. We just weird, and we don't stay in one subject. That's why our show's called Mono Bizarro, because we just bizarre and we don't stay in one subject. Um,
Well, but because the world itself is so weird,
right.
and well, and it's not just going any place just for its own sake. These different little offshoots here. I mean, that's what you have to do with
They all come together one way or another one.
exactly, and then that's what you have to do with science, with any of your hypotheses, any of these disparate pieces of information. That they connect in some way,
Right.
then that's how the hypothesis and then the theory formulate.
So it took us like 2 weeks to come with this subject. And our next subject, I don't know. What do you want to talk about next? Hmm.
So you mentioned demons before. I mean, what's your experiences with those?
I, I have not seen.
Besides your old bosses.
Well, I do study demonology. I've been studying demonology for about a little bit over 20 years, and I'm still studying demonology. I'm not a demonologist for no means, but I do know a little bit about the subject. I love talking about the subject, um,
That'd be a
because
good one.
I love when people, there's a TV host out there. I'm not going to say names, but they will always wear very tight clothes and always says that everything is a demon. And no, not everything is a demon. But yeah, we can talk about demons and about the and
where did the tight clothes thing come in? Is it because they want the demons to get a good sense of what they got going on up here, or
no, I think it's because he wants his TV show rates to go up. I think I don't know.
I see. Well, because demons, succubi and incubi, they're supposed to be attractive women and men specifically that come to you during the night. So, but yeah, I mean, demonology is a fascinating thing because you've got the Lesser Key of Solomon, you got King James,
Yeah,
who,
which I just read this amazing book. It's called. Oh, man, what's the title? I don't know if I can pronounce the title. Hold on, let me.
well, it was King James the Sixth of Scotland, who then became King James the First of England.
Actually,
Also,
it was at the same time. He was king first and sixth at the same time.
yeah.
So yes, so the book that I just read was Evil Archaeology, and it spoke about the book of the demonology book of King James, which I have that book. I have it translated in English, and I have the original translation, or the not the original translation, but the original, which I
Uh,
can't read because it's just I was like I can't understand half of the stuff it's saying, but
yeah.
for the show I can show it because I have both books with me.
Oh, so okay, so I was right. So he was King James the Sixth of Scotland from the 24th of July, 1567, and then was King of England and Ireland as James the First from the union of the Scottish and English crowns on the 24th of March, 1603. So yeah, he was the King of Scotland first, and then became King of England and Ireland. But yeah,
It was at the same time. But he didn't stop being one. He was
well, no, he
both.
didn't. Yeah, he didn't stop being one. That's what I'm saying, though, is that he began as
I'm gonna smack you.
the King of Scotland, then the English and Irish crowns got added to
You
it. But
die.
yeah, that's what I mean. He didn't stop being King of Scotland. But the point being, under his reign, that's when you had the King James Bible, the first,
and he
English language translation. But then he also wrote a pretty extensive book on demonology.
and he was a witch hunter.
Exactly.
So
So, he was quite an interesting person. I mean,
yes.
he ascended to the throne immediately following the death of Elizabeth I, and so, kind of and the town in Virginia, Jamestown, is named after him. So, kind of an important figure across English history, American history, and Christian history and paranormal history, just all over the
Yeah,
place.
he just wanted his hand everywhere. But yeah, we could talk about that. So
Yeah,
tune in.
lots to talk about in
Yes,
that.
tune in our next show. I'm not sure if it's gonna be next week because I do have an investigation next weekend. So I do have an investigation in Virginia next weekend. But we'll see if it's next week, and hopefully next Sunday we can do this and talk about demonology and demons and all that good stuff. So
Yeah,
see you guys soon. Have a good night, sleep tight, and let us know if you see any shadow people or
don't let him choke you out.
shadow animals.
Do those exist? Because
I don't know.
I haven't heard of any.
I
If
have not
they,
seen shadow animals, but why not? If they're shadow entities, why not add shadow animals? I don't know. So you guys have a good night. Stay safe. Say a prayer.
animal minerals or vegetables also, or shadow minerals or vegetables perhaps.
Okay, you just pushed it. Good night.